Hi, great to have everyone with us today. We are live again from our BlendKit studio in Orlando, Florida. I am Baiwen Chen, and with me today I have Linda Fudge and John Pizzo. Rohan cannot be with us today because he has to take care of some personal business. Today is our second topical webinar session of BlendKit 2016. We're wrapping up week 2, Blended Interactions. Also joining us are our guest panelists, Dr. Daniel Fatasek and Dr. Ida Miyazaki, who I will introduce formally in a moment. Let's take a few minutes to review a few awesome images representing us who are BlendKit 2016, all 1,500 plus of us. Here are two group photos of two of our local cohorts. On the left is the cohort from Buffalo State University. On the right is our cohort from the Windermere Preparatory School. Thank you, Megan and Brenda, for sharing the photos with us. It looks like everyone is having a good time here. On the next slide, we see Kristen and Leslie participating in BlendKit. Thank you for joining us and congratulations on the badges. Nick from Windermere Preparatory School also shared an adorable image showcasing his BlendKit badges. Thank you, Nick. And on the right, we have a picture from our last recording with our guest speaker, Glenda. We will be posting more images after today's session. Nick also shared his mixed map from his first DIY assignment. Some of you mentioned that you were having some issues with creating the chart and the map in week 1. Giphy is a great graphing tool, and I have used this tool as well with my student creating flowcharts. So thank you for sharing with us, Nick. We have some great photos here. We'd love to see what you are seeing and what you are doing. Feel free to email a photo to blendkit@ucf.edu or post your photo to our course info stream via Twitter or Flickr. If you are not sure how to do that, send an email to us, and Rohan and I will be happy to help. Images can be powerful interaction medium in addition to being useful for content presentation. However, we do need to keep in mind accessibility for all members in our community when sharing media. That being said, if you are experiencing any access difficulties yourself, please let Rohan and I know. And last, and just to let you know that all these activities are optional. Well, we are speaking of interaction this week. Please remember that there are a number of interaction opportunities in our BlendKit 2016 cohort already between the Canvas tools and the social media info stream. Linda will address some other logistical details in the housekeeping section at the end of today's webinar. In the meantime, let's take a look at today's poll. And you can see the link to the poll on the top of the page. We also have a QR code on the page. If you have a QR code scanner on your mobile phone, you can just scan it and obtain the link to the poll. Let's see how you are doing this with this week's topic of designing your meaningful student interactions in your blended learning course, and hear from you what your basic plans are at this point. First, while we've been considering interaction in blended course this past week, we may each have very different beliefs about value or effectiveness of interaction between students and instructor and among students. So let's look at the poll question 1. In my blended course, I believe student interaction will be. It looks like the majority of you believe that student interactions are very important for student success in your blended course. Next, and drilling down a little bit, what are the venues through which you plan to foster interaction between yourself and the students in your blended course? If you have thoughts other than the ones listed here, select Other and enter your response. So the second question is, in my blended course, I plan to foster student-to-instructor interactions using. So the number 1 method that you plan to foster student-to-student interaction is face-to-face Q&A sessions, followed by emails, online questionnaires, comment forms, and video web conferencing tools. So the next slide. And conversely, What are the venues through which you plan to foster interaction among students in your blended course? If you have thoughts other than the ones listed, select Other and enter your response. So this question is, in my blended course, I plan to foster student-to-student interaction using. So for student-to-student interactions, almost all participants plan to use online discussions in their blended courses. The other options that received more than half of the votes include both online and face-to-face collaborative activities, assignments, and face-to-face discussions. Okay, great, and thanks again for your input. So the next slide, and as we hear from our guest panelists today, please listen for their approaches to designing opportunities for interaction with and among students in their blended courses. We will start with the questions submitted via the Google form last week as the basis for a moderated mini panel discussion. So during the discussion, please use the Q&A window to post any clarifications you would like Dan and Ida to address. We will follow last week's format and try to get to the Q&A section at the end. If we run out of time, we will post their responses in the discussion area and open the post up for continued discussion. So let's get started. Please allow me to introduce to you Dr. Daniel Fatasek from Oregon State University and Dr. Ida Miyazaki from The Ohio State University. And Daniel Fatasek is an assistant professor of social media at Oregon State University, focusing on the economics and the visualization of popular social network sites. At Oregon State, he has been involved in instructional innovation in the traditional classroom, online and hybrid classrooms, especially with the large hybrid lecture NMC 101, Introduction to New Media. NMC 101 includes a large flipped trial that brings the best of the small, large, and hybrid classrooms into the same conversation. Ida Miyazaki joined The Ohio State University in 2000, where she is a senior lecturer in the Department of Economics, with the support of an impact grant from the Office of Distance Education and E-Learning at The Ohio State University. Ida and her team recently redesigned her 500-plus student microeconomics course to introduce several technologies, including hybrid flexible lecture attendance, access to recorded lectures, student response system, online quizzes, and quality matters-based learning management system. So thank you, Dan and Ida. We're going to start and take turns to answer questions from our BlendKit participants. So I will start with Dan, and then Ida will provide her feedback right afterwards. Both of them will have time to answer each question. So let's start with question 1. The first question is, what are your favorite tools to use in a blended course to create interaction? So thank you, Dan.
That's a great question to start out with, and thank you for the introduction. So when I start thinking about the kind of thing or tool I want to use to build a blended interaction, I want to think about how I can get the students to start thinking together. I'm a social scientist, and I work on social networks, and an idea we have is called fantasy chaining, that you want the students to be thinking together and coming up with their own ideas and making their own inside jokes. So what I start to try to do is come up with a game. So I want to have the students use some technology tool effectively to be able to interact to get somewhere. So my best interaction comes with my week 6 activity in 101, which is a massively flipped trial. So every student gets a role. They make 50 to 60 groups, and they actually, for an hour and a half, have a trial where they cross-examine each other and they engage. And so in the week before that, they're all over the online resources looking at how to have the trial. They're looking at special videos, preparing for them to go out and engage each other and then try to win the balance of the judges. So the favorite thing I like to do is I like to start by coming up with some way to get them involved psychically, some way to get them affectively into the idea of winning or losing something, or of being able to have some sort of experience that deepens their interaction with another student. And then I select the tools in my learning management platform to be able to really give them the resources they need to be able to enact the fantasy sort of scape they want. So they get to be Perry Mason or whatever lawyer they imagine that they are these days.
Well, thank you, Dan. That's a great suggestion. I'm going to turn it over to Ida. Do you have any feedback to add, Ida?
Yes, I can. First, hi everyone. Thanks for having me here. And I would like to add to it what I do in my course. My course is microeconomics and it is more traditional course. And the way we blend in and do high flex, we do have in-class lecture and students can attend online using Carmen Connect. And what we do, I use student response system just to keep students engaged through the lecture. As I am lecturing in the beginning, in the middle, at the end, I ask them different multiple choice questions related to what is covered. And that way, I keep students' attention and check actually how they are progressing with me. We also use back channel. They can ask questions, comment, concerns in regard to lecture while the lecture is going on. In addition to that, we do have online quizzes and recitations. That in recitations, we do have face-to-face interaction and group work. So basically, we are trying to mix different components, mixing technology with traditional teaching to make the course more effective.
Oh, great suggestion, Ida. Um, I'm going to direct the second question to you first, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So the second question is, how can I know for certain that my students are comfortable in an e-learning environment?
What we do for the first 3 weeks of class, we don't introduce technology much. We do have in-class teaching while we are covering different components of technology that we are using. We do have guest lecturers, we do have videos, we do have information on the course page. During the first 3 weeks, we would like all students get adjusted how the course works. And if necessary, we also have one-on-one help for students who have difficulty. Then after 3 weeks, they have option to attend the course in class or online, while quizzes are only online. And all resources also just available online. If they have problem, they either email us or come and see us. And then again, we do have very few students who may find everything challenging. And then we provide them one-on-one instruction.
Great, that's a lot of support there. So Dan, do you have anything to add to this question?
Yes, so at Oregon State, we are on the quarter system. So our classes are all 10 weeks long, and I have no graduate students to provide support. So when I do a large sort of flipped lecture or hybrid model, I'm really on my own. And so I can't really use recitations to be able to get that face-to-face support. So what I try to do is really ease them in. And so I draw out the level of online interaction versus in-person interaction in my course, almost like a chart of a narrative. So at the beginning, you ease them in, you give them small, low-stakes online activities, and then once you're 2 weeks in or so, you can really start to switch to that blended model where you do your lectures online and then have your high-impact, high-engagement face-to-face activity in that larger group. And then for me, it actually flips again about week 7, which is 70% of the way through the course, where then it's more asking questions and confirming in person toward the end, with most of the actual lecturing coming through my online video and other sort of engagement modules. So if you don't have the option to use the small group to be able to confirm with them, you want to really be careful about slowly ramping up into it and making sure that they actually understand and that you can example weeks in weeks 1 or 2 so they understand what the course is going to be. So give them a demonstration. It's just like when they play a video game. The first level doesn't ask them to master every skill in the game. The first level just asks them to master 1 or 2 skills so then they can become an expert player for the middle of the course, or the game in this case.
Well, that sounds like a very interesting class, Dan. So the next question, I'm going to have you answer first. This one goes to Dan first. This question 3 is, if I sense that some of them are just not so comfortable, how can I address their concerns while maximizing the electronic components of my hybrid course?
So the first thing that I do, and I tell everyone this when they're working on Blended, is you have to do the meta talk. And what meta talk is you need to talk to people about the talking. There's a fairly nice sort of idiom, it's a folksy saying, some people attribute it to Hubert Humphrey, which is you gotta tell them you're going to tell them, you gotta tell them, and you gotta tell them you told them. So with those students who aren't comfortable, you need to take time out in your face-to-face sessions to be sure that they understand what you're doing with the online sessions, what you're doing with those, and then following up with them. And even use the language of your learning outcomes and just be very clear that you're telling them both the story of the course and the content of it, and that you're telling the story of the course and how the course is evolving. And for me, once I started doing this, it actually made my regular classes and my online classes even better, because there's all this stuff that we're doing, all of these structures we have as professional educators and academics and learners that they don't have. And so one of the things we're doing in terms of doing that sort of socialization as students is helping them understand what's being put in front of them and how they're going to want to actually consume it, engage with it, bring it into their lives. And so you can't fix all of the discomfort. You can't make it all better, but you can make sure that you know that they are acknowledged, that you honor their issues, and that you're doing all you can to help them understand why they need to engage. And so for most of our students, at least most of my students, once they know that you're out there and that you care and that they know why you're doing what you're doing, they'll be able to get with the program.
Great, thank you, Dan. I'm learning new words. Meta talk, I just wrote it down. So great, and then it's over to Ida. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, in my course, I have about 600 students. So basically, after a while, we cannot micromanage things. What we do, as I said, during the first 3 weeks, we try to set expectations right and have students be ready if they are taking the course and they would like to get involved in the high flex version of the course. They need to learn the technology. And as we have, since it is number of students about 600, I do have 6 TAs, teaching assistants, 5 of them teaching recitations, and 1 is course coordinator. So I do have a good amount of resource in addition to the technology section of department of the Ohio State University. So we do have good support team. And when students have problem, we actually, from beginning, we tell them, if you have problem, come to us, my office hours, emails. We do have lots of resources like frequently asked questions and online resources. I do receive many emails and respond to them. Just those emails related to individuals who have difficulty. And as I said, we usually don't have that many, but those who have problems, we usually try to address them by one-on-one help to get them adjusted to the technology. As soon as they learn how to do it, actually they find it fun and they would like to continue the way they are doing.
Thank you, Ida. So that is very practical suggestions. So let's go ahead and with question number 4, and we're going to start with Ida this time. And the 4th question is, every student has a different level of comfort with self-expression in a course environment. So what are some strategies for eliciting students' expression in a blended course design? So Ida.
I'm trying to kind of see.
So Dan, and do you want to?
No, I can
first?
go ahead. No, I can
okay.
answer this.
I'm sorry, Ida. So
no, that's fine.
And start.
That's fine. Mainly, that's correct. Students have different level of being comfort level with the technology and with the class environment. When it comes to my students, most of them are freshmen or sophomore, and many of them are their first semester in the university. So they do have different level of comfort zone. So what we do, we try to actually create many different platforms for them to be able to express themselves. As I said, I do have a student response system. Also, we do have discussion section on our website, so they can open a discussion, they can ask questions. And in addition to that, we do have office hours and in class, in a 40 students classroom visitation, having group work and close interaction with their teaching assistants.
Great, yeah, that's a complete support system there. And Dan, do you have anything to add to this question?
Yeah, one of the things that I do that's a little different, I think, than a lot of people is they have. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
I like to make sure the students have a way to talk to each other. I like to give roles. So say if I have an activity where they're pitching new media that they're going to sell, some of them are buyers, some of them are sellers, and then they have characterizations. So then those students who might not be comfortable expressing themselves right away, they have a crib sheet that then lets them know things they can say, motives they can have, that then lets them be more comfortable in the in-person environment. Now, you can also do this online. So you can give those same instructions and actually structure an iterative, non-synchronous conversation in your discussion forums by assigning identities and roles to the students. So then you could have them operate like a newsroom and produce an article. You could actually, by staging it, get them to have a fight about whether or not they should put out a certain newspaper article. And so one of the ways you can make students more comfortable is by helping them have things that they know they can say so that they don't have to feel all the way exposed. So they can use that role to keep a little distance between themselves and the course. So think a little more Brecht and a little less Stanislavski.
Okay, thank you, Dan. You're all about games and role plays. That's very interesting. And so unfortunately, we only have time to cover 4 questions today. So right now I'm going to turn it over to Linda.
Good morning, everybody, or afternoon in the case of some places. We've been looking at the Q&A, and actually a lot of you are answering each other's questions. So we're going to skip that right now. There are some specific ones directed to one guest speaker or the other, so we will have them answer those offline and post them for you. I'd like to thank both Dan and Ida for your input this week. And we're going to look at the modules right now. Some of the things is that this closes out today's guest panel, and that means it also closes out this week. Baywin and I will be happy to compile any of the questions that came forward and get any answers from Dan and Ida. So let's move on to some housekeeping. As we wrap up the webinar today, we'd like to touch base on a few items. We saw some information about people having trouble navigating the course. Please contact us if you need help, if you have any questions or need help. Also, a lot of assignments came in over the weekend, so we'll be catching up on grading today and tomorrow. A question did come in during the week about badges. We are using the Credly system to deliver badges, so you need to log into Credly to accept your badges and see what you have. Now, Credly does allow you to do things like post your badges on LinkedIn, but it's not linked with Canvas at the moment. If you happen to find a page called Badges on your profile, those are the Canvas badges. You will not be seeing your badges there for BlendKit. Okay, for those of you who might be interested in attending a conference on blended learning, OLC Innovate Conference is this April 20th through the 22nd in New Orleans. Now, this actually is a conference that's a combination of their old blended learning workshop conference and their emerging technology conferences. Those two have been merged together to create the Innovate Conference. They have both face-to-face and virtual attendance available. Okay, and then there will be several members from our BlendKit team will be there for you as well if you want to meet up with us. Okay, some feedback. Again, you can see how to contact us. You can click there in BlendKit to actually send a message through Canvas, or you can send it to the email at blendkit.ucf.edu. Now let's go on to some feedback that we've had during the week. I noticed that when I was going through the feedback that there were several comments about broken links. We have done some reorganization to our own organizational website that those links go to. So if you find any links, just post it right away and we'll get them fixed as soon as possible, and then go back and check the information later. There is also a question, do I have to blog or can I just read what others are saying? Absolutely, you can read it. The whole point of this is to share information. So if you're at the point where you just need to collect information, feel free to just read it through and get what you want. If you're having any trouble with the DIY documents, Baywin showed you one option today that could be used for the mixed map. Please contact us. Those were made a while ago, so if there's new technology that works better or you have something that works better for you, as long as you get the same information back to us, that's fine. Also, a few people said, well, I already have a syllabus and a schedule online. Why do I have to recreate it? Don't. Submit your existing syllabus and online. That works just fine. And then take some time to work on the other parts of it. Again, if you have any questions about DIY projects or submitting them, please talk to us and ask us about that. There is also a question about confidentiality. Yes, all your documents are confidential. We would not share them with anybody unless we ask your permission first. So don't worry about that. They are all confidential. Okay, again, here is the link to the feedback form. If you haven't completed the week 2 feedback form, we can't stress the importance of your input. As we mentioned previously, this kind of open course is always a work in progress and it is far from perfect. Later today, you will be receiving a message from us with some guidance on getting the most out of week 2 and week 3. During week 3, our focus is going to be on learning assessments available in blended learning courses. For the next webinar, we'll be joined by Dr. Lisa Janowski from the University of Central Florida and Aaron Lewis from Oregon State University. I hope you'll join us for that session as well. I'd like to pause here for a moment to make sure that you are all certain where our content and activities are located next week. All activities are located in the module section as shown here, so you want to go to week 3. Remember, the module is just the hub for the course. Our focus for the week is on blended learning, but you need to complete the assignments that fit you best. Remember, this webinar closes week 2, and then we'll be beginning week 3 this week. Again, I'd like to thank you for your participation today, and to thank our guest speakers, Ida and Dan, and to John Pizzo, our production manager. Have a wonderful week.